A lot of what I do when I work with authors is helping them confront their fear. Now, nobody really enjoys this, but it's the work that every author who wants to stay in the game must do at some point, and every successful long-term author has done and continues to do. There's no finish line on it, unfortunately. However, it's so much easier to accomplish if you have a guide, which is where I come in. So if you're one of those people who says that fear isn't a factor in your writing career, then I have bad news for you. The fears other people carry around, maybe those aren't a factor for you, but you assuredly have fear. You're probably just so good at avoiding looking at it that you've convinced yourself it isn't there. The Enneagram is the tool we use to help us get real about what our core fear is, so we can begin to see all the ways it's been grabbing the wheel from us as we try and steer our ship in the right direction. But before I talk a little bit more about that, I want to tell you a story. So when I was 3 years old, my first pet was a snake named Francis. I found it interesting, but not scary. I don't remember ever feeling affection for it, but I was 3, so I didn't feel affection for much at that age. 3-year-olds are pretty selfish. Then from the ages of 6 through 13, I attended a summer camp each year called Pioneer Farm. We wore long dresses, pinafores, bonnets, the whole 9 yards. And yes, this was during Texas summers. It was hot. So while I was there, I learned how to leatherwork and milk a cow, harvest veggies, sew, and even make a bullet. Like I said, it was Texas. While I was there, I had a number of close encounters with snakes. I almost stepped on one in a chicken coop. I was feeding the hogs one time and I looked up and I saw a snake hanging from the rafters above me with a rat halfway out of its mouth. And then one fell out of a tree while I was playing under it and it nearly landed on my head. So that sort of thing. Wouldn't you know that by age 13, I was absolutely terrified of snakes. I went so far as to feel nauseous if one turned up in my path, even just a picture of one. My mom had a silver necklace that sort of looked like a snake. And when I saw it lying on her dresser, my heart rate would shoot up and I'd start to feel dizzy. That extreme. When I was 14, my older sister decided to buy a pet snake right before she left for college. And living in the room next to it for the next 4 years wasn't exposure therapy so much as a living nightmare. I would wake up in cold sweats after dreams that it was under my covers with me. So if you're wondering whether I attempted to confront the fear during that time, yes, I did. I went with my sister to the pet store to pick up the snake. And while she drove home, I kept the thing in my lap, in a pillowcase. I could feel it moving around on my legs. She encouraged me to give it a little pet, and it struck at me. Not great. Then when I was 16, I even went to an exotic pet store with one of my friends, and we worked up some courage by holding a scorpion and a tarantula first, and then they brought out the snake for me to hold. I managed to hold it for about a millisecond before my vision started tunneling and I hollered for someone to take it from me before I passed out. So my attempts at confronting my fear back then were not effective. And I didn't know why at the time. I do now, but more on that in a minute. So flash forward to 2018 when I moved into my current home in Austin. I didn't know at the time that there was going to be a massive rattlesnake problem in the area. There seemed to be a pit somewhere nearby, which made sense considering we were in a new subdivision that was built on old pasture land. The first summer was yet another living nightmare for me. Neighbors were posting pictures of rattlesnakes hiding under furniture, curled up in the brush, right along my dog walking routes, and snakes just chilling across sidewalks like some sort of bridge troll ready to throw a riddle my way. It was terrible. We closed the doggy door at the start of that summer because they can get through, and didn't open it again until well into fall. I was scared to leave my house. I was constantly battling my dog's predilection for sticking her basset hound nose under rocks and into bushes. And I was generally anxious every time I went outside. My fear had greatly limited my movement and my options in my own territory. It had become way too big and burdensome at that point. But I learned a few things about fears over the years. Namely, I learned that the best way to combat it isn't to rush right toward it, but rather to learn about it from a safe distance. It's an evolutionary impulse to fear what we don't understand. So if we want to face the fear without re-traumatizing ourselves, like I did with my sister's snake and at the exotic pet store, we need to start learning more about that fear and about ourselves. So that's what I did after the summer of 2018. I started researching and learning about snakes. And what I learned was that most snakes don't want anything to do with me. I also learned how to identify the venomous snakes versus the non-venomous snakes so that I didn't have to let every snake I came across limit my mobility. In fact, the non-venomous snakes, like the king snakes and rat snakes, will either eat the rattlesnake babies or hunt the same prey and therefore help keep the rattlesnake population from exploding. I learned what a snake looks like when it's ready to strike versus when it's just going about its day, hoping not to be messed with. And I learned what time of day they're most likely to be active versus when they're hiding away from high traffic areas. When I tell you, I learned a lot about snakes in that time of my life, I mean it. And then one day, something strange happened. I was out walking my dogs at dusk and I saw a massive snake in the middle of the road right outside my house. Easily 6 feet long, thick, dark coloration. It wasn't a rattlesnake, and I knew that from what I'd learned. So something strange came over me, something I never expected to experience about snakes, and that was curiosity, even fascination. So I hustled the dogs inside, and then I returned to the snake, not only to watch it move, because it was actually pretty cool to watch how it moved when I wasn't terrified, but also to make sure it didn't get run over in the street. I shepherded that snake across the street and into the nearby field. Are you hearing me? Do you understand how far of a distance I traveled just by learning about snakes? From wanting to vomit when I saw a necklace to being only a few feet away from a live one by choice and playing the role of its protector. Okay, so I tell this story to illustrate how we overcome fear. It's not by rushing toward it before we're ready, but rather by learning more about it and about ourselves, understanding our histories, not trying to push forward through the fear when our vision is tunneling, but rather learning more and more about it until the curiosity kicks in. And you want to get closer to it to further observe it and learn more. This is why we learn about our core fears in the Enneagram. We talk about them, learn about what it means to have that fear, what emotions and thoughts are attached to it, what events in our life have taken that seed of fear and watered it to be a big, thorny thing that limits our movement. The result is that the more you learn about that fear, the smaller it becomes, and the more space for curiosity you gain. That curiosity is what eventually leads you at your own pace toward confronting the fear. I will never ask you to go to the exotic pet store and hold a corn snake, so to speak. The best approach is always going at your own pace, not re-traumatizing yourself, and letting your curiosity be the antidote to your fear. The result of this on your writing career over time is that you'll have so much more movement. The options for what you feel comfortable trying will be more expansive than you thought possible. And those options are everything if you want to stay in this long term. Curiosity and our ability to learn new information is the best tool we have against fear overtaking our lives and restricting our movements. Confronting fear in that way is a non-negotiable for all creatives. So I hope you'll stick around and learn more about the Enneagram with me. I won't throw you in the deep end, but I can help guide your curiosity so that you want to explore the things that used to scare you. Do you already know what your Enneagram core fear is? If not, you can start exploring it with my free 5-day Indie Author Supercharge course at ffs.media/5 5day, or you can leave a comment if you want to work with me on this project, and I'll get us started with the next steps. If you already know your core fear, let me know how you've been exploring it lately in the comments.